Hafidates and Mananasitus, Imina 85 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Colleagues, when we last left off, we had placed 218-35 to the bottom of the second reading file. So at this time, I will recognize Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton, on Bill number 253-35 COR. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I move to place 253 in the second reading file to discuss. As substituted.
Move to accept first, Madam Secretary, and if you can, read the bill number, the authors, and then the title, please.
Madam Speaker, I move to accept Bill number 253-35 COR as substituted by the author, or as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and substituted on the floor. Introduced by myself, Senator Joe S. San Augustine, Vice Speaker Talina Cruz Nelson, and Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes. And this is an act to amend Section 28202 of Article 2, Chapter 28, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to grandfathering existing merit award recipients from the changes in benefits made in Public Law 35-151 and requiring the application of the merit award to tuition and fees, and to allow for other forms of financial aid to cover other aspects of the total cost of attendance in order to ensure the success of our merit scholars.
Madam Secretary, that's Public Law 34-151, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Colleagues, I just want to note before we moved on the motion that clerk has informed me that the documentation has been uploaded and it's on your Google Drive. So on that motion to accept, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still recognize.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Bill 253-35 serves to preserve the benefits.
I do apologize,
Yes.
Madam. Move to place on the third reading and then for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place it in the third reading file for discussion.
You may proceed at this time, Legislative Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Bill 253-35 serves to preserve the benefits of the Merit Scholarship as originally signed by Merit Scholars currently attending the University of Guam and Guam Community College. And for our colleagues and for the listening public, the Merit Scholarship is an award given to our top high school students from all of our island schools. And it's an award to cover their tuition and fees, their textbooks, expenses, and a stipend throughout their time in college so that they can focus on the work before them. And this award is given to one for every 50 graduates or a fraction thereof of a school's graduating class. And so right now at the University of Guam, we currently have over 200 merit scholars who are, in their courses from freshman to senior year. And in the last legislature, a bill was introduced as a cost-saving measure to the University of Guam. But we learned very quickly after that bill was introduced that it had some unintended consequences to students at the University of Guam who planned out their academic careers with being awarded the Merit Scholarship in mind, as well as federal financial aid. And so what the Public Law 34-151 did was make it so that the federal Pell Grant, which is a need-based grant from the federal government to a student based on your household income, would be applied to your bill at the University of Guam before your merit scholarship would be applied. And this turned many of the plans of our merit scholars upside down. They were no longer able to finish out many of their academic plans, to take courses during the intersession or during the summer break or Christmas break. They were no longer able to receive the refund from their Pell Grant, which they have used for all kinds of school-related expenses. For example, transportation or housing or just basic necessities to live as a student with their full-time job being a student. Now, I know many of us are familiar with these merit scholars who work for their 4 years during high school to be the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in their class, top of their class, so that they can ensure that their higher education is paid for. And so these students worked their whole 4-year career in high school with the idea that they'd have this merit scholarship available to them, and if they filled out the financial aid, that they may also be eligible for the need-based aid, and have both of these forms of aid during their college career to excel and to be able to focus on school. And so I can just go through the bill as substituted on the floor for my colleagues to let you all know what was added to this version of the bill. The first in this bill, first change that you'll see is that the Guam Community College was also added, where we see the University of Guam listed. And this is because in 2017, the law was changed to also allow the Guam Community College to have merit scholar students attend the college. And so you'll see where the University of Guam is listed, so is the Guam Community College. And for a period of either 2 or 4 years at GCC. The second change from the amended bill was the name of the actual contract for the merit scholarship recipients. And so they received a contract. They receive a contract at the beginning of their term as merit scholars that they must sign. And so that second change was included to add the actual name of the merit scholarship contract. Actually, Madam Speaker, can I have a minute recess?
We are in a moment's recess. Y minuto 35 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And so I went through the bill as substituted, and I do have one floor amendment to offer before we get into the discussion. So the amendment can be found in the drive, and it is labeled B253FAALSL3P3. And this is an amendment on line 3 of page 3 to amend section 28202, section A of section 2 of the bill to read. If you're looking at the part at the bottom of this section where it talks about the contract, this is an amendment to add the actual name of the contract that these students signed, which is the University of Guam Merit Award Promissory Note and Merit Award Rules and Regulations contract effective as of the Fanichanan semester of 2020. So to add, for clarity in the bill, the actual name of the contracts.
On that motion, on that amendment, are there any objections? Anyone wishing to speak? Madam Secretary, if you can just also add and to allow Legislative Council to make the necessary changes, please?
Yes, that's also included in the amendment, and to allow our Legislative Council to make any technical changes. Thank you.
On that amendment, without any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I look forward to the discussion on the floor today and any suggestions from our colleagues to strengthen this bill to ensure that we are providing the assistance that was promised to these merit scholars to allow them to excel in college. And just to give everyone a reminder that these students are given a 4-year ride to the University of Guam, and they are expected upon graduation to give back in service to our community somehow, whether it's working for the government of Guam in their field. For every year of tuition and stipends that they are given, they are expected to give a year back in service to the people of Guam. So I ask that our colleagues take all of this into consideration to ensure that we are giving them the help that they need and were promised. So Dios Masi.
Thank you, Legislative Secretary. On the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? If not, Senator, Minority Leader, please proceed.
Pardon me, Madam Speaker. Here for your indulgence, I'm still trying to get my computer up and going. If you give me 1 second here. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that time. I appreciate it. I'm not as techie savvy, so trying to do my best here. But good morning, colleagues. Madam Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to providing a few of my thoughts on Bill 253, which I think is really, I think this bill is unnecessary, and especially during a time of uncertain financial future on Guam, not only on Guam, but also in the U.S., on where we're standing here really is based on being able to use federal funds first, which is so important. Public Law 153-35, which required merit recipients to seek federal funds first through the Pell Grant to cover full tuition, like the Merit Scholarship. However, it doesn't cover the monthly stipends. If you go through the Pell Grant, it doesn't cover the monthly stipends or stipends for books that the Merit Scholarship covers. However, this doesn't stop the awardee or the recipient of that Merit Scholarship to seek any differences in the Merit Scholarship Fund. In other words, it would cover the shortfall. So again, a recipient of the Merit Scholarship Award based on Public Law 151 that was passed in the 24th Guam Legislature, it allowed this scholarship recipient to go to the Pell Grant, and whatever they did not receive, that they were part of the benefits of the Merit Scholarship, they would go to the fund under the Merit Scholarship for the balance. So all in all, today, as we're sitting here today, none of those recipients or awardees of the Merit Scholarship does not receive their full benefits. They receive everything that's stated in the Guam Code annotated on what benefits they receive. A full ride, a 4-year full ride scholarship. So all in all, again, they receive a full year scholarship on the Merit program. These students get exactly what the Merit Scholarship rewards. So why are some students not happy with the current requirement to this Merit program? According to Mr. Duarte, who's the head of the Student Financial Center over at the University of Guam, before Public Law 151, the merit recipients can also apply for a Pell Grant. So the question is, why would they apply for another grant if they already received a merit scholarship which covers 100% of tuition and provides a stipend as well as a stipend for books? Some might say that those merit recipients want to load up on additional classes or need the money to use for something else. I read a testimony from one student that she said she wanted to also have a Pell Grant so that she can purchase a new computer, leftover costs for books, and I quote, most importantly, to buy a car, unquote. I didn't realize Pell Grants can do all that. But what about all those other students who's less fortunate to even have a merit award scholarship? Who's going to help them and their dreams going to college and getting their degree? The legislature appropriated $3,065,285 in FY 2020 budget from the general fund to the University of Guam for the Student Scholarship and Financial Assistance Program. The Merit Scholarship costs about $2.5 million every year. That only leaves $565,250 for all the other scholarships and financial assistance programs. And there are about 218 students under the Merit Scholarship Program now, and a total of about 3,200 university students and about 2,000 GCC students. So let's do the math on that. The Merit Scholarship is costing the general fund $2.5 million. And the leftover, a little over $500,000 for 3,200 university students and 2,000 GCC students seeking financial aid, seeking scholarships. And did you know that 40% of the students attending the University of Guam, 40%, Madam Speaker, are students that are less fortunate, that are under great financial need, great financial need. For example, a parent working 3 jobs and having 2 children attending college. Public Law 151 What it did was freeing up additional local funds so we can provide additional funding needs to other students and to the over 6 different student aid programs. That's what Public Law 151 did. Currently, the nursing program at the University of Guam has been reaching out to the administration requesting to include the nurse applications for financial aid to extend to sophomores. Currently, they only approve for junior and senior year tuition because the lack of funds. Now remember earlier I mentioned all that's left out of the appropriation for local funds is only $500,000. There are about 25 applicants in the nursing program that submitted their application for financial assistance for the nursing program alone. Now, also, by the way, in the nursing program, they're required to go to the Pell Grant first before seeking any local assistance on scholarships or financial aid. Also, social workers majors hasn't even been funded yet as well, or health science majors. Many of these students are unable to get any funding or assistance because there's not that much funding left over. Again, there are additional 3,200 students just at the university alone, and 40% of that, 40% of that are less fortunate or having a difficult time getting financial assistance. To the point, there are federal funds available for our students at University of Guam and GCC. And if the merit awards fall short from the Pell Grant, the merit scholarship will cover the shortfall and make them whole. This is currently what's happening now. This change started in the fall of 2019, and since its inception, by diverting our students to utilize federal funds for the University of Guam, there has been a savings from $300,000. How many students would be able to benefit from that? Quite a bit. Madam Speaker, that's more students that are able to fulfill their dream of getting a college degree. And we as a body have the opportunity to make that happen for many more students. Lastly, I had the opportunity this morning to speak to a student who is in receipt of a merit award and in her second year at the University of Guam. And I asked her, if you had known what your current guidelines to receiving the merit scholarship today set forth in Public Law 151, would you still have worked hard and strived for that scholarship? She said, absolutely yes. Madam Speaker, the current law is not a hindrance to discourage our high school students to strive, but instead, it allows us to fund more of our students the opportunity to fulfill their dreams of making a better life for themselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
You're welcome, Minority Leader. Anyone else on the main motion?
Madam Speaker,
do you have an amendment?
Yeah, a point of information, Madam Speaker, sorry. The University of Guam, Dr. Kreis, I spoke with this morning, they are not in support of Bill 253, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, I will recognize you.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, just a point of inquiry for the author of this legislation. Did we receive testimony, or is there testimony in the committee report from the University of Guam President Kreis?
Legislative Secretary, would you like to yield?
Thank you very much. In the committee report, there is testimony Let me find the page for everyone. Okay. Page 86 on the committee report.
Susan Masi, Madam Speaker, I just think it's important that all of my colleagues are able to read these testimonies in their entirety. One of the retiring speakers was pulling a quote from one of the testimonies that we received, and it's really important for us to look at the entire message that's being shared with us from members of the public, especially from these students that are affected by this law. And if you'll allow me, Madam Speaker, I'd like to just read, to give it a little bit more context to the testimony that was read previously. And this is from a student, a current student at UOG under the Merit Scholarship. I'm writing to humbly appeal for your support for Bill 253-35, which would grandfather existing merit scholars from the effects of Public Law 34-151. Public Law 34-151 was a law that had directly affected the financial circumstances of many merit students, myself included. This was announced to the current merit students on the 16th of August, 2019, a whole 8 months after it had been passed, and 6 days before the first day of classes. Much of what has emerged from the passing of this law has been problems. Personally, I come from a low-income household with a single mother who works as a teacher and 4 other sisters. Beforehand, I was fortunate enough to have attended the same school my mother was working at, but once I transitioned to UOG, transportation easily became one of the major issues I faced because our schedules did not line up with one another. There were many times where I would have to be dropped at the university very early or stay back very late because I lacked transportation. When I accepted the Merit Scholarship upon graduating high school, I, along with many others, was under the impression that I would be receiving the entirety of my Pell Grant because this is how it has always been done. We did not receive any notice about Public Law 34-151, and we did not receive any change in the contracts that we signed. Simply put, when I selected to attend the University of Guam after graduating as the salutatorian of my class, and after rejecting many other scholarships, I was expecting to receive my Pell Grant of over $5,000. I had planned to use this money to cover expenses that the Merit Scholarship was not able to cover, and it was mentioned previously, a computer, leftover costs of textbooks, and most importantly, a vehicle for transportation. And, she continues to go on, and I think it's very important for our colleagues to read the entirety of these testimonies and to make sure that we, attempt to put ourselves in the shoes of these students. Madam Speaker, I was once a student at a university, and transportation was one of the single biggest issues that many students faced. Not just getting from one class to another, but many of these students are part of households that require them to continue working while they go to school. And so, especially during this time when we're having trouble, there's so many unemployed and many jobs that are out of reach for people who don't have additional skills. We need to do everything that we can to ensure that our students, especially these merit scholars who have displayed such great promise, that we don't change the rules in the middle of the game for them. And unfortunately, this was something that happened in a previous term. So this, in my mind, is an opportunity for us to rectify that. And if we're able to, it's my understanding that over 200 students are affected by this. And so, Madam Speaker, I rise to just ask my colleagues to please take the time to review the committee report and all of the different information that we're receiving, and really also perhaps, if you can find it in your heart, to put yourself in the shoes of these students who may have had an opportunity to plan out their financial game plan to attend college, to attend school, in addition to jobs that they and their parents have been working. It's all very complicated. The FAFSA application is very, very complicated. It takes into consideration all of the different members of your household, all of the other siblings or people in your household that are contributing. So it can be very challenging. And so I just urge my colleagues to please consider the entirety of the situation that's being placed before us. And I would just want to give an opportunity to the author of the bill to once again just clarify, if possible, if we can clarify that if the Pell Grant can be used for some of these things like rent and utilities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Anyone else? Senator Marsh Tatino.
I apologize,
I
Madam Speaker. I
apologize.
just had a point of inquiry for the author of the bill.
Yes, I do apologize. Legislative Secretary, you have the floor.
Thank you very much,
Richard.
Madam Speaker. And to give our colleagues a little bit of a background about what a Pell Grant is, it is a grant from the U.S. Department of Education to help eligible low-income students pay for college costs that include tuition, fees, room and board, and other educational expenses. And these other educational expenses can include transportation, like one of the testimonies we received in the committee report during the public hearing. This can include transportation for a car, or perhaps even a new laptop so that a student can do the work that's assigned to them at the school. And again, Pell Grants are for low-income students. This means that not every merit scholar is receiving a Pell Grant or is a low-income student who is most in need. Every Pell Grant recipient must meet certain requirements, a threshold based on the income that you receive in your household or as a college student on your own. So this is for students who are most in need. Many of our UOG students are on some type of financial aid, not just Pell Grant, but on student loans because they don't qualify for a Pell Grant. But Pell Grant is for those most in need with the lowest income in our community.
Senator Lee, does that help?
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, and I'd just like to add, when listening to this student's testimony, I'm also just reminded from conversations that I've had with other UOG students that transportation is certainly an issue for students both in high school and in our college students. But we're hearing stories that some of these students have to stay on campus until late in the evening because they don't have rides or they're unable to get from home to class. And for many female students especially, that poses a safety risk. It poses a safety risk when we're out waiting till all hours of the night after sundown. And we've already, heard from students over the course of the last several terms about, some of the safety concerns that they've had on campus. And so in addition to making sure that our students are cared for and that our students have these educational opportunities, we also want to make sure that they're making the best use of their time and that they're safe, Madam Speaker. So that's one of the things that just came to mind for me. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Senator Lee. Senator Taitano, on the main motion.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker. So I don't know how I compare to everybody else here, and I've made no secret that I've had times in my life that have been struggles. In high school, we moved to the States And to be quite frank, we were poor. We got to a point where we were on food stamps. We got to a point where we were homeless and actually lived out of a station wagon and a van. I showered in the park, and I caught my bus to school from there. So needless to say, that was when I was a senior in high school. Needless to say, I did indeed qualify for a Pell Grant, but we moved back to Guam after that, and I didn't apply it then. And I worked my way through the university. So I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in saving where we can. But I also know firsthand, from what I see and what I've lived through, what some of these students are going through. We know that we have students on this island. They go home to a substandard house that's maybe some old tin and an old door stuck together as a house. No electricity, no running water. And so we have many in our community with these severe disadvantages. So in thinking of this, I looked at the term of equality and equity. So equality, we could say that we're applying this across the board, that across the board, the federal program would be applied first. But then I looked at the idea of equity. So if you're an individual, or if you have parents that can afford to send you to school, but you have achieved academic excellence and are rewarded with a merit scholarship, your parents could pay for your tuition. You as an individual could pay for your tuition. But that is not taken into consideration. Your merit scholarship is applied. But if you're financially struggling, then somehow your merit scholarship is potentially going to be less, that you are being penalized in a sense for being financially disadvantaged. And so this is where I think that we need to look at. If it is academic achievement and it's being rewarded, then it should be academic achievement that is rewarded, whether you are middle class, wealthy, or poor. And to penalize those that are already financially struggling and trying to make something of themselves, to me, that is a travesty. We can look at other programs, but it doesn't change the fact that in this situation, we're trying to create a situation that is about equity, about providing that opportunity for that student to succeed. Because it exists in the same way or a different way elsewhere doesn't change the logic, the truth of this equity situation. And we also need to look at the bigger picture. Hearing from perhaps just one cannot be extrapolated to the whole. Again, that's another logical fallacy. And so what I go back to is what the purpose of this program is. It is academic achievement. It's rewarding that academic achievement. And are we going to apply it in an equitable way that is not penalizing anyone for their financial struggles that they're already trying desperately hard to work through? There's this one young girl that I remember meeting a few years ago. She is one of 12 children in her family. They live in that house I described, of a tarp roof, some tin, and an old door. No running water, no running electricity. The mother goes and plugs in a little device to try to save up a little bit of electricity. She goes somewhere where she can get free water to fill up a 5-gallon jug. And that's what they have to survive with when they get home, to do their homework by whatever light that they can put together. They bathe with that 5-gallon jug of water, and then they maybe charge up whatever they need to from that device that's been charging from somewhere else throughout the day. That is the reality of many of our people. And so I want us to think of that. Whether we are going to penalize a student like that, to say, well, if your family is wealthy enough to pay for college, they're not going to be penalized and they're not going to be asked to ante up. But if you've received a grant because you're trying to lift yourself out of a situation like that, then we will penalize you by taking away from your academic achievement. And that one young girl was a straight A student. I don't even know how she was, but she managed to be in 9th grade at the time and still was a straight A student. So I just wanted to share those comments for us to think about as we're weighing this out. I don't have any questions at this time, but I'd like to ask to reserve any remaining time in case a question comes up later. Sutus Mahasi.
Thank you, Senator Taitano. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Trishlai, you recognize.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill, seemingly simple, but really was very, very difficult to I think, get straight, because what it's actually doing on the version that we have in front of us is very different from the version that we had a public hearing on. So we started off, first of all, I want to say, I support those students that came in and said that a law that we had passed in the past legislature had impacts to them that were not ever anticipated. I don't think by the legislature, and I'm not sure if UOG was aware of those when they came and asked us to pass that law or not. However, they had told us at the time, if we passed that law, that we would be, the students, that this was what was done all across the nation in every college, that they applied Pell Grants first before they applied, in our case it was merit scholarships, and I was assuming in other states, state scholarships. However, so then this bill was put out to reverse the impacts on those who did not anticipate it, and those for that one class of students that did not anticipate it, and that everyone else going forward would be given notice and be able to plan accordingly. The bill as we have in front of us now is very different from that. The bill now is saying that it's not a grandfathering in of those who had already been receiving the merit awards. This bill now is going forward, going to pretty much repeal the law that we passed in the past. It doesn't say it like that, but it's exactly what's going on. It's saying, in fact, the reverse, where our law had said we use Pell Grants first, this law now says you use merit scholarships first and Pell Grants second. And this would allow the students who are receiving Pell Grants to keep that money and use it for other than tuition and books. And so I support that because of all the same reasons that have been stated earlier, because these students are in need, and the more we can help them to get through college, the better. But I just want to point out a couple of things with this bill. You know, the merit scholarships, those are government-mandated scholarships. It was the legislature and past legislatures before us with the vision that they wanted to reward students with high academic achievement and with, you know, free tuition. And so they set it out in statute. And then every year, the legislature appropriates, they used to appropriate for the different scholarships that were mandated by the legislature. But the legislature in past years was again convinced to lump those all together, give UOG the discretion to use them as they want, and not really specifically allocate amounts to each different scholarship. But what we've seen, I think, is, you know, UOG wants to make a savings in the merit scholarship program so that they could use it, they said, in their other financial aid programs, some of which are not mandated by law at all. UOG has created their own financial aid programs and used the appropriation by the legislature not solely for the scholarships, as one of my colleagues said earlier, like the nursing program, the social work program, the ones that the legislature had recognized a great need in, but they've also expanded it to other areas. And so, of course, you know, if we're going to, I don't agree with, you know, putting it on the backs of those merit scholars recipients to, you know, save the government money, you know, when I think UOG has within their discretion enough discretion to save in other areas and to continue to honor the merit scholarships. One of, you know, we were led to believe, I think, that we could not afford the merit scholarships anymore, and that's why we needed to use the federal funds. And it's you know, it's a tricky, you know, argument because, for example, I asked UOG during the budget discussions to provide us information on the student financial assistance programs. So they provided a chart, and it's very clear that less has been spent on merit scholarships and all scholarships in FY18 versus FY20. In FY18, $2.5 million was spent on merit scholarships, and in FY20, only $1.9 million. The number of merit scholars funded went from 215 to 218, respectively. The savings, it's not clear that it went to give more scholarships out to other students. Overall, $5.16 million was spent on all student financial aid programs at UOG in FY18, which funded 827 students. And in FY20, only $3.4 million was spent on student financial aid program scholarships for 696 students. Again, there's that $1.7 million in savings that from this chart, I'm not sure where that is being used. UOG has been appropriated almost the same amount for scholarships in FY18 and FY20. In FY18, they were appropriated $3.68 million, and in FY20, it was $3.615 million. Now, they've been receiving maybe irregular allotments in FY18 versus today, or FY20, but I think they've testified that their FY20 allotments were coming in regularly now. One of my colleagues in side discussions had suggested that we might need to reduce the number of merit awards if we're going to go forward with this bill in order to fully fund the current merit scholarships, but I very much disagree. I think we have given them money enough for the merit scholarships. What they need to do, or what they might consider doing at UOG, since they have the discretion, is to reprioritize the statutorily mandated scholarships such as nursing. A dismal number of nursing students are receiving nursing scholarships at this time, Madam Speaker. I think if I recall correctly, it's less than 30. Less than 30. And this is a discretion. So I'm asking that UOG reprioritize, that if this bill is passed, they're going to revert to the, the old system where they get their full merit scholarships and they get their Pell Grants, and they use it as they see fit, and that the University of Guam prioritize the merit scholarships, the nursing scholarships, the pro-tech scholarships, where we're trying to get those very highly needed professionals and others. Our ultimate goal is that every high school student, every graduate can aspire to go to the University of Guam. And if they want, and if they qualify for a Pell Grant, that they can get that, and if they are entitled to a merit scholarship, that they can get that. I don't think that goal has changed. I can see, of course, I was there, but I'm pretty sure I voted for that bill that was passed in the last legislature when it was described to us that this would give them savings, they would in turn give more scholarships. But because I'm not convinced that that's actually what has occurred, and I think the savings should not be on the back of these students if we are to achieve savings. I did have one question as well, and that is, I think this bill, it was intended to grandfather in students who UOG had applied that old law to, or the recent law to. So they did not receive their full merit scholarships. So will this bill now force the university to come up with the money and pay them right now? Is that the intent? Because, supposedly they've spent that money elsewhere. So if I could just ask the sponsor if she would yield to that question, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Shelton, would you like to yield?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. It is not explicit in this bill that they will be required to pay that money back to the merit scholars for this last year that this law has been applied. No, that is not clear in the bill. You're right.
May I ask the intent? What? Sorry, I was interrupted. Yeah,
yes. Senator Shelton, would you like to answer that follow-up question?
Well, of course, I'd like to see every merit scholarship get exactly what they were promised. However, that's not something that we prepared for in this bill. So if you'd give me a moment during the break, I can discuss that with my co-sponsor.
Thank you. Senator Therese.
All right. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, so ultimately, I don't want to reduce the number of persons receiving merit awards. I'm hoping that we wouldn't have to. I want UOG to continue to prioritize merit awards. They continue to send us testimony, that they are urging retention of the requirement for merit scholars to tap federal Pell money before merit is applied. And as I said, this is exactly what we were told the last time. And I guess I want, to do what is going to help the University of Guam to be able to cover more people, to not go back and demand we need tuition increases and all kinds of things. However, I just think let's balance it first by prioritizing the scholarships that are mandated by law before any other expenses, and not on the back of those who are in need, financial need. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Castro, I understand you had your hand up. Did you wish to speak, sir, on the main motion?
I did, Madam Speaker. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues. This is a very healthy discussion. I too noticed that the original intent of the bill has changed substantially from a grandfathering provision, which I totally support, to a complete repeal of the original piece that was passed into law. And while I can appreciate the position stated by my colleagues, I don't necessarily look at it from a business transaction in terms of whether the university is going to use these savings or anticipated savings. I do look at it, if we're going to look at it from a money perspective, I look at it from two different perspectives, Madam Speaker. The first one is, I thought it was quite visionary, responsible, if you will, from my colleague here who introduced the bill when it was passed, that we utilize federal resources before we tap very limited Guam revenues. I mean, that made perfect sense. We saw that we were anticipating a decline in the economy, and then lo and behold, look at us now, right? We're seeing double-digit reductions in certain revenue variables as a result of COVID, Madam Speaker. So for me, if that argument was put on the table, it makes perfect sense that we would want to tap the federal funds available to assist these academic achievers. And I'm in total favor of that. I really believe that it should be rewarded. But I just want to remind my colleagues, because I'm struggling with this, and I hope during the break I can come to terms with what it is I'm going to do in terms of my vote, but I'm struggling with this discussion to my colleagues who, again, shared their thoughts. What you're looking at here, if you just look at the two academic achievers, okay, just to be clear, you have an academic achiever from one school, it doesn't matter what school, and then another academic achiever from another school. Let's say it's two public schools, but one of those achievers, because of social economic status, Madam Speaker, qualifies for additional financial assistance. And that's great. That's great, but it doesn't, for me, it doesn't set the bar, and I have to go back and discern the difference between equality and equity in the context of the bill. But what it does is it allows that other academic achiever, while they've already succeeded, persisted through high school, the additional advantage over, let's say, a middle-class student or a lower middle-class student. And I don't think you have to look too far. I can speak for myself, Madam Speaker. What happens to that child who was I wasn't a merit recipient, but let's assume it was one of my children who qualified for the merit scholarship, but because of my income, couldn't qualify for the Pell. Is that academic achievement being awarded, or are we creating an unequal playing field for both of them to continue to persist at the University of Guam? And I don't have the answer to that question necessarily. I can work it out. I mean, you just take simple dollars and apply the Pell first, and then the balance goes to you, or apply merit and all the Pell goes to that other student. My point would be, I support the merit recipients getting monies and additional assistance to attend the university. But I am always discouraged when we tend to lift up a particular class of society or bring down another class at the expense of all other people. That's all I'm putting forward for my colleagues to consider. Whether the university, again, to restate my position, is wisely utilizing its quote-unquote savings, that's not on the table for me. It's looking at the overall fiscal fragility of the current government, and then also looking at the effect that you have on that parent and that child who couldn't qualify for Pell. For me, in that context, it makes no sense. And I want to reserve the balance of my time, but I'll close with this. I just want to state for the record that the GFT has entered its opposition to it, and also that President Christ, I'm sure it's because of his subject matter experts at the university, submitted quite a number of technical amendments for our consideration, and I think it's because he sees that as well, that while we want to give these students additional benefits, he certainly wants to take full advantage of the federal monies that are already coming in to pick up part of that tab. Again, I thank my colleagues for their input. I thank Senator Teresa Lahi for affirming my thoughts that, in fact, the original intent from grandfathering a student that's not the case. While it's in the title of the bill, in effect, for the record, what's happening is this bill attempts to completely repeal what my colleague Senator Sonogstein had passed in the last term. And I'd like to reserve the balance of my time, Madam Speaker, if there's opportunity to speak on the main motion. Thank you again, and I thank my chair, the oversight chair, for clarifying some other issues here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Legislative Secretary, did you have a point of information? It's,
Yes, I have a point of information before we break for lunch, Madam
Yes.
Speaker, if I may. There was a point made by the previous speaker that GFT was in fact opposed to the bill, and I'd just like to make mention that it was the recommendations of GFT that were taken into account in the substitute version of the bill, so we adopted their recommendations. I don't think it's fair to characterize their support, their opposition of the original bill as opposition to this substitute version of the bill here on the floor today.
I will go ahead and address you, Senator Will.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clarification. So can I just get it stated for the record, and I'll take your good word for it, my colleague. Are you going on the record to say that the GFT supports the current version of the bill? And that would help me in my thought process, if she would yield.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Shelton?
Well, I won't speak for the GFT, but I can say that the testimony that they provided during the public hearing was opposed to the bill in the original form, and they asked that the bill, Public Law 34-151, be repealed. And though we haven't done that in those specific words, it has this substitute version of the bill tries to accomplish what was suggested by the GFT, and so they have not given a new testimony or shared their support now, but I'm just sharing with the body that they were opposed to the original bill.
Thank you. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and take a lunch recess. We'll come back at 2 p.m.